Now, students, we will be doing the feature on Galileo Galilei. We are going to study his story, as I told you. Now, let us start. See, students, have you ever wondered seeing the stars or the moon? Have you ever wondered how would the surface of moon be? Galileo Galilei was one such person who thought of that. Today we know so many facts, but at that time everything was new. He was born on 15th February 1564. And what you must know is that he was born in Pisa, Italy. You can see this is the close up of the Leaning Tower of Pisa. And right from his childhood, he was very much interested in mathematics and natural philosophy. But his father, Vincenzo Galilei, wanted him to become a medical doctor. And that is why, see, he was born in Pisa, Italy. It is known for its Leaning Tower. We are also going to see its view. And this is the Florence, Italy, where he went for his studies also. And we know how famous scientist he was. And he went to University of Pisa to study medicine, right? But he never finished the degree because his real interest was in maths. He went to this university in 1581, but he did not complete it. He was very much interested in experimental work, right, rather than the medicine. And he studied motion. You can see the design of his experiment. He started working on motion of the objects and he wrote a book, right? He wrote a book and published so many papers. He wrote his first scientific book, The Little Balance, the one which is shown over here, right? La Balanceta, in which he described the Archimedes method of finding the relative densities or specific gravity of substances using a balance. In 1589, see, he published so many papers. He had series of essays called De Motu, and he presented his theories about falling objects using an inclined plane, which we have seen today itself, to slow down the rate of descent, right? How with the help of inclined plane you can slow down the descending of any particular object. Now, what happened? See, these are his findings. You can see how he wrote this. Now, in 1592, he was appointed professor of mathematics at University of Padua in Republic of Venice. And he continued his observations, and in that time Aristotle was considered the supreme in his findings. And you know what? He continued his observation on motion and inclined plane and pendulum and all. And he formulated the correct law for uniformly accelerated objects. And what was that law about? That the distance the object moves is proportional to the time taken, right? And what we must know at that time, Aristotle was considered as the greatest one. His findings were considered as the best findings, and anyone opposing Aristotle's theory was considered incorrect. So, same thing happened with our Galileo. You can see how he did pioneering work related to universe, also related to moon, related to the revolution of earth around sun or sun around earth. uh, we will see what that is all about, how he disproved this and all that. He was interested in these things. He kept on doing his findings and all, and pioneering work in the telescope was also done by him. He was a remarkable craftsman, right? And he did see telescope, how beautifully, primitively at that time he worked. And the telescope developed by him was better than most telescopes available at that time, right? And performance of his optical telescope was also much better. He also designed pendulum clock and all that, right? And he claimed that he had seen mountains on moon. His theory was totally different. He said that it is the sun, right? He did findings on that. It is the earth which revolves around the sun and not vice versa. Vice versa is incorrect. He made all these observations. See, he said all the planets they move around the sun, and it is not the sun which moves around the earth. And this I wanted to tell you that this was called as Copernicanism. Means Copernicus, he said, he had already said in the 16th century that earth revolves around the sun, and he said yes, this is the correct thing, as opposed to what Ptolemy said, right? So this was what he said. Not only earth, along with it other planets also move around the sun. Using his own telescopes and through his observations on Saturn and Venus, he argued that all planets must orbit around the sun and not the earth, contrary to what was believed at that time. Right? So he was the one who found out that. But you know what? This one is Nicholas Copernicus. His findings were considered to be very correct, like that of Aristotle during that time. So Galileo said what Aristotle said, he told totally opposite to that. So he was called for punishment over there. People complained about him that he is spreading false things and all. People complained about that, and really a meeting was held to declare the punishment on Galileo Galilei for his findings, for his opposing Aristotle, right? But thankfully he was asked to say sorry, to apologize, and he did this and said that no, all my findings are incorrect, and later on continued with the same, right? But he could escape the punishment. He was also called before the Spanish Inquisition. Questions were asked. Inquiry committee was set up for his scientific findings. In Spain also, he had to answer all the questions. But again, he was not punished over here also, and even if he was sent to jail, by apologizing he came out every time and continued with his scientific findings. Later on, his scientific findings proved out to be, after his death, you know what? His scientific findings proved out to be very, very useful for the coming scientists. And so many scientists, they used his findings in um, giving their experiments and in studying their works, right? So one such person was Sir Isaac Newton, who utilized Galileo's findings and did his work. So, what happened after his death? Galileo was, see how he is observing through telescope at that time. Very rare and beautiful pictures are given over there. See. So, this is how it was done. And after his death, he was given great honor, and a letter of apology was also then published that we were sorry we could not recognize his talent when he was alive, right? And really he did a great work in the field of science. He found out telescope. He also said that the surface of moon and sun, they are not so smooth, right? He said Milky Way is made up of tiny stars, and he found four small bodies which orbit Jupiter in his books Discourse of Floating Bodies, Letters on the Sunspots. We know sun has spots on it. He disclosed his observations on sunspot. So we must, give a salute to him because of his contribution in the field of science.